I'd like to introduce you all to our guest speaker today, Norbert Herrmann. Norbert is the COO of xLabs. It's a MAP startup, came through the program in 2014, and they provide a real-time eye tracking solution through webcam. So he has a wealth of experience in design as well as product development. Prior to xLabs, he founded his own startup, which was then acquired in 2005. And he also had experience working with large organizations such as Telstra, Sensis, Victorian Government, where he championed design thinking across a variety of scenarios. Without further ado, would you please join me in welcoming Norbert?
Hi. I thought we were going to play the final countdown as I came in, but it's okay, we'll go next time. Look, thanks a lot for coming along, everybody. Today, obviously, I'll be talking about design thinking for startups, but I'm also going to be looking at a few different case studies of businesses of different scales. So I'll walk you through what we've done with our own business, xLabs, as well as some of the things we've done in corporate environments as well. But this presentation is very much about starting with some very high-level concepts and then expanding upon them, and then expanding upon them, and then providing some frameworks that will hopefully guide you to be able to show you how to break out some of the challenges that occur in trying to apply design thinking to a business of any scale. So, as mentioned, that's me. I'm the COO of xLabs. COO sounds like a nice shiny title, but in actual fact, it's when you're working in a company of 8 people, it's really just a job title to open doors. And that works quite well when you send somebody an email and you've got COO on it. They tend to respond, so it's quite an effective strategy if you're ever doing anything in a startup. When you're trying to look me up later on, it's important to note that there is a huge succession of extra letters in my name there, so just bear that in mind. So a little bit of I've been working in the startup digital online space for better or worse over 20 years now, and my first real job out in the digital world was with a startup called Sausage Software. Some of you guys might have heard of it. A lot of you may not have. So I was their 6th employee, but they were one of Australia's real first internet successes. They managed to have success in the market with a WYSIWYG HTML editor. They were one of the first in the world to actually put a WYSIWYG HTML editor out on the market, and it went great guns, and it exploded, and it sort of became an international success. So right out the gate, I got exposed to this wonderful world of startups and innovation. Obviously, back then, it was a lot less structured than some of the stuff that we're going to go through tonight, but it was such a fantastic ride and a lot of great learnings, and still stuff that, you look back on and go, yeah, that's still applicable today. Really starting to get down to it, though, what is design thinking? In the background of this, there was a lovely video that was playing that was scrolling through a whole bunch of examples of design thinking, mock-ups and, different flows and patterns and things like that. I think most of you will have been exposed to some level of what is design thinking and trying to untangle it and think, how do I apply this to myself? There's a lot of different, I think that, the thing to bear in mind is there's a lot of different interpretations, there's a lot of different levels, and there's a lot of different levels of detail that make up design thinking. What I've tried to do tonight is to try to take the things that I know, I love, and sort of run you through that as a sort of end-to-end process to show you how you can use that in a business of any scale. And at its core, really, it's about getting empathy with users. That's what it's about. It's about injecting that user voice back into the conversation. And it's not about giving priority to users, it's about balancing that with the other tensions that occur within a business and within a technology business in particular. I think it's also very important through these processes, it's about being rapid. It's about not being afraid to throw stuff out there, not being afraid to throw stuff away, to pivot, to adjust and adapt. But as long as you're being guided by the voice of your customers and you're empathizing with the problems that they have and how you're helping them move from the task that you're trying to achieve to where they want to go, then you're going to be on track. Design is a loaded word though, so one of the things to bear in mind when you hear about design thinking, it's not about making a logo bigger and redder. It's, it's a common misconception when you sort of include design as a loaded phrase into a conversation. It's in this context, design thinking is actually something that's far more holistic. It encapsulates a broader range of ideals. People who come into businesses with a design thinking mindset, they're not representing just users, they're actually speaking with the holistic voice of the business, and that is the platform, the business, and the users. And I'll get into that in a bit more detail. So I'm going to run you through a little bit about the core principles of design thinking. This is a very, very simplified version of a number of different ways to describe the process. At its core, it's about building an understanding of who your audience is, what are their problems, what are they trying to do, what's stopping them from achieving that, what's going to help them to achieve it, and how can you, ideally in the process, delight them and make them advocates for your products and services. So this very simplified funnel is about building that understanding, breaking out the problem, turning it into something that you can actually start to ideate, pulling out all these ideas and putting them on the table and then looking at those ideas and kind of going, which ones of these are the ones we want to put in front of our customers? And then taking that time to put that in front of those customers and getting their feedback, and then using those insights as a feedback loop into how you continue to refine and evolve that thinking. There's lots of different versions of this, build, measure, learn. There's this one. There's another model which is a lean startup model, which you'll see in the online pack version of this. That is, it's about kind of starting narrow, going broad, then bringing it back in and going out again and bringing it back in and iterating and refining. And that's the lean process version of that model. Breaking out the principles a little bit more. So understanding your users' needs and empathizing with their pain points. A big part of this is, where do you start? How do you do that? So as you can see, I talk a little bit about a customer profile, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We've talked a lot about empathizing with our customers, so I'll show you how to do that in a minute. The next step is to, once you understand who your customers are and what their problems are, it's then about trying to match that with your ideas, your products, your services. How do those things mesh together? Where are you solving problems today? How can you answer your customers' questions with what you have? How can you what do you need to do tomorrow? How can you evolve your products and services to better meet their needs? And that's where the value map comes in. A big part of this process too is not being afraid to throw stuff out there and not being afraid to throw stuff away. If you give your team the right context, a team of any size, there's no bad ideas. You're giving them all the information they need to be able to contribute in a valuable way and to be able to sit around the table at people at any level of an organisation and contribute great ideas that can help solve customers' problems. I've claimed that quote, obviously, but I suspect there's probably like 1,000 other people that have said that in various points across time. And a big part of this is obviously about testing and learning. You want to take take that feedback. You want to listen to your customers, and you want to feed that in and figure out how do you adjust and adapt your ideas and your thinking. And it's not about trying to gold plate the, when we talk about prototyping, this isn't even necessarily building something. This is, I've gone through processes where we've literally sat with users with bits of paper in front of them and said, this one or that one or that one, here's a scenario. What do you like? What don't you like? If you had to do this yourself, what would it look like? You can start with paper. You can start, it doesn't need to be a working piece of software. It doesn't need to be a great gold-plated solution. It can be really rough and ready, and you can get sometimes just as much valuable insight out of paper-based prototyping and testing and ideas that you, as you could by investing 18 months and $20 million in a corporate environment just to get the same answers, which I've obviously experienced firsthand. And then it's a constant process of refining and delivering. And you're moving from, low fidelity prototyping to higher fidelity prototyping, trying to move towards that minimum viable product where you feel that you have something that is ready to take to market. And that doesn't mean that the product that you're taking to market is the be-all and end-all solution that solves every single problem. All it is another moment in time where you move from being behind the curtain to being in front of the curtain, and it then becomes another opportunity to continue to test and learn at a larger scale and continue to iterate and refine. So that process should never stop. So that's great. I've talked a lot about the principles. The next step is to how do we start to really break this down? How do we start to apply this? This is, I know there's possibly a couple of people in the audience I've tortured with this over the years. I call it the pub scale. It's basically where you look at how the platform capabilities and limitations intersect with the business's goals and the users, the customers' needs and wants. Obviously, I've been doing this for 20 years, and one thing I've become quite sure of is that it's the same problems over and over again every time I go to work at a business. Yeah, there's different weightings, there's different priorities, there's different limitations, but at its core, this is a sort of simplified version of every kind of business problem that you're going to run into over the years in some way, shape or form. And yeah, you can extend on this, you can kind of say, but some people, some users want luxury, so you should have luxury. Yeah, you can build and expand and contract on this, but at its core, these are the kind of common repeating themes that you see across any business. Now, the ROI in the middle, this guy, is if you do it well, if you do it right, you're finding connections between these things. There's some of the business, the case studies I've got later on sort of talk a little bit about businesses that focus heavily either on the platform or businesses that focus more on the commercialization aspects, and then it becomes a retrofit of how to kind of connect that back to the user base. Ideally, if you're starting out if you're building a startup today, and you've got a great idea, you can start to ask these questions right now and sort of forego the headache of getting down that track and then realizing you have to pivot quite heavily. One of the things I love, I spent a lot of time last year actually in consulting land, spruiking, lean startup, design thinking, agile methodology into big corporate environments. Because there's a strong push at the moment, particularly in the corporate landscape, where we're in this very unique moment in time. We have, over the last 5 years, we've seen this dramatic landscape change where all of a sudden new players can come into the market. They can spin up an environment at very low cost. They can push a product out and they can capture an entire segment of an audience in a very short amount of time, which is something that wasn't feasible before cloud services and APIs really started to come into their own. So that's driven a strong demand from the corporate side of the world to how to adapt, how to keep up, how to go from these large waterfall-based multi-million-dollar, multi-year horizons to what can I do today? How can we get these questions answered right now without having to spend millions of dollars and, you know, have hundreds of people looking at this? Some of the stuff that I've gone out and talked to these guys about is these quite simple methods that can be very effective even in corporate environments. This one's a great one. You know, there's a few variations on this, but the design sprint, you know, it's not a rigid 5 days, just sort of it's a 5-step process. But, you know, really what you're looking at is you're building understanding, and that understanding is understanding not just about you really need to start with who is my actual customer. And a mistake a lot of businesses of any scale make is trying to be too much to too many people day one. And hands up, yes, xLabs is also partially guilty of that. They've got some fantastic technology that they've got underpinning them, and a whole world of opportunity, which I'll show you in a minute. But where to start? How do you start generating revenue? How do you actually put the least amount of effort in and get the greatest amount of return? How do you know where that is? And so you want to start to unpack the problem. You want to kind of go, who really is our target audience? And you put it all out on the table and go, great. These guys have huge returns. It's very long lead time. These guys are, you know, we can get a lot of small incremental kind of return from these guys, but it's going to mean a huge sales process. So there's pros and cons to every corner of the market, and it's about kind of looking at what your idea is and then thinking, how does that start to relate to this? So understand the problem. If you've got an existing product or service out there in the market, particularly, you know, if you're talking in the corporate landscape, often you're coming in and kind of going, okay, we're now struggling. How do we adapt? How do we shift our thinking to start to, reconnect with our customers? So a great example, I did this for a billing project with a telco. We flew people in from all around Australia, or different parts of the billing team. We did a 5-day design sprint with that team. And what we had was people representing customer service. We had people who were, you know, in front of house in the stores, people who were online answering, billing inquiries and handling all that hate email that was coming through. So we had, first of all, bringing all those people with these different perspectives into that room, putting the problems in front of them. My role in this is actually more of a facilitator to guide people through that process. It's about helping them to discover this by themselves more than anything, because they kind of have the answers, but they don't always talk to each other. And it's not until you get the people that have the understanding together sometimes that you can truly understand what the holistic picture is and how to solve it. So this, you know, you're understanding who your audience is, you're unpacking the problem, and then you're looking at, well, what are these people trying to do? What's stopping them from doing it? And so you start to create these theories, these hypotheses around, well, maybe what if we wanted to do this? How could I test that theory? And then you get a whole bunch of these different hypotheses that look at this problem space, and you start to go, great. Some of these are really, really powerful. So you get everybody to kind of vote which one's their favourites. So you might start with 30 hypotheses and knock a screen or two in the process. And but then by the end of it, you're sort of filtering down and going, okay, well maybe these 20 are like some of our strongest ideas. Great, let's focus in on that. So then you start to evolve and iterate those ideas out and get everybody to kind of shift, adapt and adjust and go, great, yeah, if I was to take this idea and adapt it, maybe I could add this and add that. And then at the end of that, you start to go, great, which ones of these ones stand out amongst the crowd? So that then forms the basis of what you spend on your 4th day prototyping. And the prototyping is essentially your lead in to going and putting that stuff in front of your customers on day 5 or step 5 of the process. So in the case of this billing thing, what we had at each of these steps was, okay, our customers keep calling us up and complaining about their bills. We don't want them to call us up and complain about their bills. Surprise. So how do we stop that from happening? Great. Here's a lot of different ways we think we can stop that from happening. Let's look at which ones of these are, most achievable in the least amount of time. We can put out to market and with the least amount of effort get the greatest amount of return. Okay, which of these hypotheses that do that can we, filter down and evolve to be more cohesive stories that tell, and how do they potentially link to one another? And then how do we kind of visualize this or write this up in a way that we can explain it to our customers in a way that'll make sense to them? And then on day 5, we sit down with the customers and go, okay, this one, or that one, or this one. So in the case of billing, a lot of the problem was this concept of proration and billing cycles. There was, in certain telcos, there are some constraints around if you buy a new phone or you migrate off any old plan, you might start a new billing cycle and then you might be charged pro rata. So you're not just getting what you expect to pay, you're also getting the handover amount from other bills, and then if you get any other products and services. So in the worst case scenario I saw, somebody had signed up for they changed a plan, they'd signed up for additional services, and for what was meant to be an $80 a month Foxtel bill, the first bill that they got was $780. So you can imagine that customer was not happy. So the whole process was designed to not make that process happen again. And out of it, we were able to go through this cycle 3 or 4 times, testing, iterating, evolving the ideas, adjusting, throwing out the stuff that wasn't working and wasn't getting traction with the target audiences. And at the end of it, we had a really solid solution that we fed back to the business, and it actually had a whole bunch of different touch points, from everything from when you sign up to a plan, you get things like an example of what your next bill will look like that is part of that sign-up process. You've got better online knowledge base and information that is available that's also part of that onboarding process. And also redesign of the end bill, which was able to help people kind of easily digest the information that was put in front of them and help them to understand if there are additional fees and charges, why those additional fees and charges are there. So xLabs is the business I work for. ISDecide is our first official product that we've launched to market, and we've only done that in the last month and a half. xLabs as a business has been a part of the MAP initiative for the last 2 years, and it's been a big part of that process has been there's been a strong investment in R&D. The overarching goal of xLabs was this idea of wanting to build I guess there's a strong demand for this in the market now, these artificially intelligent kind of bots that can help you to better service your needs through different channels. So where xLabs started was, Joe Hanna, the CEO, Ellen and Dave, both PhDs in IA backgrounds out of Melbourne University, came together and wanted to build out this idea of building this artificially intelligent platform that could essentially be like Siri on steroids, a Siri that would actually understand who you were and could connect to your problems, understand a lot more about your life and your emotions and the things that were guiding you. What they discovered along the way was some fantastic market opportunity that related to head tracking and eye tracking. So this is a little bit about what that landscape looks like. So when we were talking about before, not trying to be everything to everybody, the end of last year, there was all this amazing opportunity out there for xLabs to explore. The challenge was, okay, now how do we actually take our first step and create a product that we can test and validate this wonderful technology solution in the market with? This is where this sort of leads us into value proposition design. So it's essentially a value map plus a customer profile, which I'll explain a little bit more. So we talked a little bit before about understanding your customers. So if you look at this in a slightly different way, you can see that there's a whole bunch of these things that vary in effort and and value. Obviously, B2C, Yeah, it's low effort, but also low value. So, do we want to focus all our energy and attention on something that is going to, got to be a long time to actually help us even break even? Probably not. Can we use that as a part of a broader strategy? Probably, yeah. There's other stuff like assistive technologies. So we have a free product that's used by about 3,500 people with physically challenged people. It's a mouse replacement piece of software that, so if you can't use your hands to use a mouse, you can use your eyes and navigate around the internet using that. So we have that out on as unofficial product on the market that's heavily utilised at the moment. But again, it warms our hearts that what we've built can have such a profound impact on this market. But we didn't really want to commoditize it either. It was a nice showcase of our technology, but at the end of the day, it's not something we necessarily wanted to commercialize. And even if we did, it's still sort of going to be the low end of the value chain anyway. So we're very excited by gaming and very excited by some of this other stuff. There's a lot of interesting stuff in eye tracking for diagnosis of people with autism at the moment. There's some great screening work going on. The Boston Institute that we've been talking with a lot. They've been using our platform to help early stage diagnosis of various disorders, and we're also seeing this now going out into fields like Alzheimer's and dementia. So there's a huge market out there potentially for using this software, this platform as a mechanism for helping health, education, training, early learning and diagnosis. But there's a lot of heavy lifting involved in that, and the return on investment is going to be considerably lower. So we started looking at, as you can see, market research, advertising, UX, corporates, digital agencies, and research kind of coalesce quite nicely together, and they all have a common sort of set of values that they operate to. So it made it easier for us to start to think about, okay, well, if we're going to bring a product to market, let's maybe focus it around that. We can not have to do too much to take this stuff. We know there's demand, and we know that these guys pay, and they pay well. And so if we want to break even, this is a great place to start for us. And again, it's coming back to the least amount of effort, greatest amount of return from day one. So how do we do that? As I mentioned, xLabs had a lovely webcam-based eye tracking and head tracking platform. So we wanted to then start to look at the market research, advertising, UX fields. What do they kind of do? What are the jobs that they do each day? What are the things that they set out to do in their various fields? And there's a lot of overlap between these things, but essentially the core is studies and research of different degrees. And there's a lot of really, really awesome user testing solutions out there on the market. But the one thing they all have in common is that they don't have eye tracking, and they not easily and not embedded. So we started to think about how do we apply this, and is there enough of a pain to get these customers to think that eye tracking is going to actually solve a problem. So we started to look at, well, what are the actual things that if you're doing all of these sorts of things that kind of hold you back, that what could eye tracking give you that you're not already getting today? So as you can see, things like the ability to get your data quick and efficiently, the ability to reach a whole bunch of people. A lot of facilitated laboratory testing is restricted to bring people in, recruit them, bring them in, sit them in front of a thing, walk them through a bunch of scenarios, give them some money for completion of the task, and off they go. If you want to test 1,000 people, you can't do that. It's very hard to get qualitative data en masse. So there was an opportunity there. And one thing that eye tracking does really well that standard, click tracking, time on site, mouse tracking, that sort of stuff doesn't do, is shows you how people are engaging with that content and those services. So that then, if you lift another level up, if they get through those pain points, what does it actually help them to do? So all of a sudden, we're starting to get into these games where it's helping people to get clarity of decision making, ease of presenting those ideas to stakeholders, to clients. We've all been in these, ironically, these long drawn out PowerPoint presentations where, you're looking at data and you kind of, here's some graphs with things and we've got this Excel spreadsheet and as you can see, there's a slight deviance here. It's to pull that all together into some sort of visual thing takes time and effort. So one thing that, heat maps and user replays can do is tell that story straight up front. And whether it's, if you're going out and pitching to, if you've got a business that is a service business, it might be a digital agency business or something like that. We had one of our clients recently use our software to help pitch for a piece of work that they won with a charity organisation. Their differentiator was the inclusion of eye tracking in that. They came in, they ran a study on their existing site, they put that up and they said, okay, this is why you're not getting the click-through rate. Your answers are already here and we can help you fix that. So it can actually help you win work, it can help you present that work back to the clients, it can help you pull it all together. So, we start to, and that's sort of what led us to deciding to build a research platform that had eye tracking also at its core. So there's, and that's really what Eyes Decide's about. And I'm not here to spruik Eyes Decide, but it's actually a really good case study. So what it does do is it relieves these pain points that a lot of these these customer jobs are trying to achieve. It does it in faster, more efficient ways. It does it cheaper. It means that you can solve some of the things about reach. Like we can send you a URL and you can sit at the other side of the world and conduct eye tracking research on your laptop in your house. That's something that really has been quite unobtainable, particularly with eye tracking and gaze tracking to date. We've got very small direct competitors in the space. The closest competitor we have is a company called Sticky, and they have a very different value proposition to us. Theirs is a very self-contained platform. You don't get access to the data. You're very limited on how much you can do, and it's very, very costly. So we wanted to sort of look at that and kind of go, well, people complaining about that, what can we do differently? And this is what we did. So at the end of the day, we also wanted to excite people about eye tracking because there's also a bit of education that's involved in injecting a new technology into an existing market, into an existing process, into an existing line of thinking. And, you need to not just get people excited about this idea of, oh, wow, eye tracking, heat maps, yay. It doesn't solve everything. What it does do is complement the other stuff that these people are doing every day, and it helps them to be able to stand out from the crowd in the way that they're working and really sort of help bring their customers and their stakeholders along for a far more integrated journey so they can see what people are doing. So when you look at this value proposition map, we've addressed all the customer jobs by building a platform around these customer jobs. They're specifically designed for market research, advertising, UX design optimization. We've been very clear about how we wanted to address these big pain points and try to use this not just in our product development, also in our marcoms, in the way that we communicate our product to the market. Because we had a very technical solution, we were going out telling people about this technical solution. The problem was people are not really interested in hearing about technical solutions to problems that they're not sure that they have. They want to hear about how you're solving their problems that they have. So we've been trying to shift and adapt our language, the way we position our product in the market around these things as well. So not just build the product around it, but also the way we position the product in the market is also using all the same language. And do I think we've nailed it? No, absolutely not. I think we've been in market for 6-7 weeks now. I think we've got a long way to go. But when I look back at when I joined the business 3 months ago, this is the first task that was given to me in that business, was to help bring this product to market. And where we've come over that period of time, we've completely used all the user feedback from our trial period. We've adjusted the platform to be more product-centric, user-centric, self-contained. We've looked at onboarding messages. We've looked at knowledge base information. We've tried to make the more usable, done a lot more hand-holding, integrated things like intercom so we can have direct conversations with our customers as they hit key target points throughout their experience. But we've still got a long ways to go. What we've built up is a really clear understanding of who our customers are, what they're trying to do, what's stopping them from doing it, how our product could initially have helped them, and how we've adapted it and evolved it over the last few months to be very honed in on their problem space, and help to also delight them a little bit and excite them about having something new and interesting that helps them to tell their story in a better, more effective way. This takes us then the other side of the scale. We're sort of building out now, understand the customer, understand our business. How do you articulate your business? I'm sure there's a few of you here who've seen a version of this in some way, shape or form before. I'm a big believer that if you cannot complete one of these things for your business with a high degree of certainty for each of these boxes, then you need to go out and try to shift these grey bits to black and white, because it's all about going from thinking to knowing, and that's the process of iteration, and that's why we keep evolving, adapting and adjusting. It's about trying to fill out each of these boxes with a high degree of certainty. You never get it 100% right, but it's about trying to get as close to knowing as you possibly can. And as you can see, what we've already discovered through the value proposition process is we understand our customer segments. We understand you should be able to draw out the kind of channels that, if you understand your customers and who they are, you should understand how to communicate to them. You should be able to understand what kind of relationship you want to build with those people. You should be able to start to understand a little bit about how you can generate revenue from that audience, and that's also a big part of the validation process. And you should have the formula. You should be beginning to form this wonderful idea of what your core value proposition is. And it won't be necessarily a technology solution, it'll be a problem-solving value proposition. When you look at that in the context of the things we've just gone through, this is sort of how the xLabs eyes to side model looks filled out into that. This is obviously a simplified version, but you can see these pink bits sort of represent the bits that we've gotten out of going through this value proposition canvassing. The blue bits represent the bits we've gotten out of our sprints. The green bits represent the spillover, the other stuff that sort of relates a lot more to the operational, the platform capabilities. But together they form a very clear and definitive picture of who we are, what we're doing, and how it all ties together. Now, I put these colours in as a guide. Don't take it as a verbatim. This is just, you should, if you go through these steps, these processes, you'll be able to fill this stuff out. And you keep going back through it, you can continue to evolve and adapt this and, remove stuff and add stuff and shift it around. But, I'm a big believer in, ideally, we'd love to have, if we had the wall space, printed one of these things out and stuck it on the wall so anybody that comes in can see who we are as a business and where our focus is. And each day, each of us as employees and co-owners in that business can be reminded of where our energy and effort should be focused each day. So this brings us back to our good old friend, the pub scale. When you think about all the things we just talked about for xLabs and Eyes to Side, you see some, pretty much it's almost like a checklist. Yeah, we want a good, reliable, affordable, delightful, speed and easy platform. That's the things that our users won't get in. It needs to be accessible, check. It needs to be reliable, each day it gets a little bit better. It needs to be scalable, yep. Flexible, responsive, connected, all those things. And yeah, we're in a process right now of, because we've checked off all those boxes, we're now building our customer base, we're promoting our brand. We're looking at what does the next iteration of this product look like? What do the spin-off products look like for us? We're testing our revenue models, our pricing structures, and we're also looking at how do we operate in a very lean manner? How do we, what do we have to spend to be successful versus what can we do with what we've got? For those of you working in a startup or about to work in a startup, you're very familiar with, this idea of operating off the smell of an oily rag. It's our entire marketing budget is largely what I've got on my credit card. And so when you're when you're sort of there with those decisions, for every dollar I spend on marketing, that's $1 less of our funding runway that we've actually got as a business. So we want to be very sure that everything that we're doing has sound justification and is delivering to these things to bring us into here. Like a lot of startups, we're thinking about the exit strategy as well. Like, in an ideal world, where do we go from here? We create a great product, fantastic. People love the product, even better. People give us lots of money for that product, fantastic. Do we want to do this forever? Probably not. Do we want somebody to give us a whole bunch of money and be on a yacht somewhere? Maybe, I don't know. Or do we want to be able to just have this as an ongoing revenue generator in the background, maybe float it, and then focus on what's more near and dear to our hearts, which is exploration of R&D. So a little bit about our pipeline for the future, not just head tracking and eye tracking. So this week we just released a beta version of a live website tracking solution as well. So as much as our research solution is fantastic for those target audiences, we also released a solution that you can basically include in any website that will give people the opportunity to opt in on your live website and do eye tracking on your website and give you that data straight away with very fast and efficient calibration and feedback. So it's a yin-yang kind of thing. When you're building a product, Eyes the Site's fantastic if you haven't taken that product to market. If you've got a product in market, Beagle X is going to be great for in-market products as well. So we've still got a long road ahead of us to generate the revenue, get the name out there, bang that drum, and the first big step for us is become sustainable. So generate enough revenue that we can pay for our major operational cost, which is our salaries at the moment. And being a startup, you can probably guess that it's not a huge amount of money, but it's an amount we do have to cover. So I've got a couple of other case studies that I'll run you through. So the first case study is the Sensis API search and data program. 5-6 years ago, I went to work for Sensis. They were looking for somebody to essentially head up their API program, and it was, as you can imagine, 6 years ago, APIs weren't that commonplace in the market, particularly not in Australia. I spent a lot of my time talking to people and using Google Maps as an example of what an API call can provide, just to contextualize it. Nowadays, obviously, I'm sure there's not many people in the room that wouldn't at least be familiar with it in some way, shape or form. But back then, we had a theory. We thought, could we generate more traffic using an API? Sensis had all this wonderful data it was sitting on top of, but it was restricted to these verticals. With the Sensis APIs, we had to actually go through the whole process of kind of, okay, good theory. We've got a technology, a platform solution that means that we can, we could leverage all this power of our data and put it out to audiences. But would people actually want to build anything off it? Is there an appetite in the market? So we had to start from square one. We had to kind of build an API community. Thanks. I'm assuming that's for me. Cheers. Cheers. So we actually had to go out and see if there was such thing as an API community and then try to build it. So we talked to entrepreneurs, we talked to the developer community, we talked to enterprise environments as well, some of the big players like, some of the big search parties to go, well, we had the richest set of Australian data available, so would some of the big search players be interested in getting a hold of our data as well? So what we were essentially doing at that process was building out our customer profile, understanding who our segment was, where the opportunity lay within that. And there was a few opportunities. There was one about growing a stronger user base, creating a stronger engagement with the content that Sensis had. The other side of it was actually new commercial generation, new means by which to generate revenue for Sensis using their existing playing field. So what they had when I joined was, that's not going to live there. What they had when I joined was essentially all these verticals, yellow pages, white pages, where is, true local, all had their presentation layer, all had their own search solutions, all had their own mapping solutions, all had their own sets of data, all operating in isolation of one another. And then, so what we looked at was, what would the best of breed solution look like from a capability perspective? So we developed, underneath the API, we started developing these core capabilities like a great search algorithm. And that great search algorithm needed all of Sensis's data. So we looked at how do we acquire all of this disparate data and aggregate it together. So we started creating these best of breed capabilities, and then we were able to deliver that back out to Yellow Pages as the first port of call. We migrated the entirety of Yellow Pages onto a new search engine, the one that was actually not based on their old print structures and print rules. We had a richer set of data. We were able to do some fantastic stuff with classification of data, a tricky little thing called an ontology, if anybody's familiar with what that is. So we started not only using our own data, but going out and crawling and scraping their business websites and building up these capabilities and all that sort of stuff. And then in that, the whole time we're doing that, we're actually going out and we're running hackathons with these startups, these entrepreneurs, and these big corporates to see what was the appetite with them, what were they calling out for, what were they potentially wanting to do with this. And I always love these weekends where you go in kind of going, hey, yeah, we've got this API, it does search stuff, it does data stuff, and seeing some of the stuff that people created with it, there was some really great ideas around how to gamify business listings and, not dissimilar sort of concept to the more recent Pokemon Go stuff that we saw, augmented reality, gamification of business listings that will reward those businesses. And but because it was all this combination of geospatial data, really good classification of data, and natural language search, we continue to evolve and adapt. And so out of it, by the time I left, we'd uplifted the search traffic for Sensis by over 15%. We'd migrated Yellow Pages and Where Is onto the platform. We had Bing, Yahoo, and Apple all taking feeds of our data off our API, and so we were generating a lot of revenue off those guys as well. So, but at its core, it was coming down to just finding these demands within this upscale and being able to kind of say, okay, yeah, there's business opportunity within there. People are calling out for better data and easier access to it. and they want it cheaper and quicker, and they want to be able to, developers wanted to be able to just pick it up and not have to spend money on it and just plug it in and then build something off it. The return for us was getting the traffic back to Sensis, which meant their whole advertising model was accommodated in that. It's all about convincing advertisers that people are looking at their ads and therefore connecting to them. And the better your search results, the better your data, the more people you connect to that, the better the return on investment for the advertiser, the more revenue the business generates. So we were able to solve those problems for Sensis. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other challenges with a directory-based business, but to be able to do this like lovely startup agile environment inside that corporation was a wonderful moment in time. And another important part of it, actually, bringing it down to the execution layer. I would imagine a lot of people here work agile or Kanban or Scrum-based, project management of some sort. I'm a huge advocate for when you're writing your stories, when you're developing out your epics and your ideas and your planning, that you should be able to tell this story for every single one of those cards on your board. You should be able to say, as a user of some sort, I want to do a thing, and so that I can achieve this goal. It brings us back to our value proposition, which brings us back to our sprint and our validation. So every single card that you write up should be able to tell that story about as somebody who's wanting to find a plumber. I want to get access to relevant content that's near me, and so that I can connect to a plumber that can, fix my leaky tap. The great thing about that is it might sound a little laborious day one, but what it actually helps is it's a big part of the education process for a team as well. And this is a big part of the importance of this too, for not just thinking about it from your business, but how you apply this into your day-to-day practice, how you apply it into your mindset as business owners, as people working in startups. It's about bringing everybody along for that journey. The value proposition stuff we talked about earlier, it was just as much about getting the answers as it was bringing people along for the journey. The pub scale, talking in this language when you're writing up cards is just as much. You've got them all up on the wall. You can see, okay, somebody can walk up and they can see why this card is on this wall because they know what problem it's solving. And if they want more information, the team is there to help them along. But at a glance, they can see why it's doing. It's not build this thing. It's you need to build this thing for this person because they want to do this. And if you're not doing that, it's how do you prioritize your work? Sometimes it's based on instinct. If you don't have that story, you'll naturally know. But as your businesses grow and become more successful, those messages get lost. Once you start going over a team of 5, you can't be across everything all the time. And therefore, how do you prioritize? How do you keep across things? How do you know that the right things are being executed in the right way at the right time? You need to be able to tell this story for everything at every level of the business. Right up at the top to say, as an epic, we want to do these things so they can solve these problems, and then right down to the execution layer, agile delivery, to be able to say, when a developer picks up a card to develop a story, or product manager's working on an idea, or a UX guy's working on a solution to a problem, they know the problem they're trying to solve in the broader context, not in isolation, not just as a task, but in the holistic picture, which is really what the pub scale's about. And the other example, which I've cunningly obfuscated the name of this telco, but Obstraphone, I'm sure we're all on Obstraphone here. They had this wonderful idea. This is the final case study for the night. So they had this great idea that they wanted to do self-assurance, i.e., if you've got connectivity problems with your mobile Wi-Fi or broadband connection, they wanted to give you an app that could help you to troubleshoot that issue. So now my initial reaction to that was, okay, interesting. I can see how that could work. I can also see theoretically how it may not work. So we went through that design sprint process. Again, we flew a whole bunch of people from around Australia to come in and sit down and go through this 5-day process and sort of flesh out, okay, we removed the app concept from the picture altogether, and what we brought up was, what is the core problem that we're trying to solve? And the core problem was people were calling up complaining because they didn't have connection. And so going through that process, we were able to draw out that understanding who our target audience was, understanding how they needed to navigate their way through troubleshooting. Like if you get an issue with connectivity, a lot of people turn things on and off. If they've got some, if they lose phone connectivity or they lose internet connectivity, they use one of the other devices to try and troubleshoot. The last thing that people, as we discovered, the last thing that people do is go and look for an application to generally help them solve those problems. So what we ended up doing was pivoting the entire project and rolling it into a larger body of work that was all about troubleshooting for telecommunications and internet connections into a huge knowledge base that had great useful information. We also looked at how to provide better messaging around outages and give people access to the common things that they were calling up about. So rather than giving them an app that they theoretically may have not even been able to download in the first place because they had a connection outage, we actually shifted it to the channels that they did operate through and gave them the right knowledge and the right capability to be able to troubleshoot themselves or assist people that were novice users with troubleshooting without too much hand-holding, where really at the end of it, all you end up with is, most people just kind of go, I've got an outage. Does anybody else know that I've got an outage? That's most of the conversation. And can I turn it on and off, and will it make it go again? And how do you give people that information, and how do you keep them informed? So what we ended up delivering was a solution that was very much centered around giving people the right mechanisms, messages, resolution times, knowledge bases, and access to all that stuff. And so that was quite a great successful story for the business as well, because it not only solved this one problem that they were trying to address, it actually rolled it into a bunch of other similar projects, and they were able to leverage the learnings that we'd provided through going through this process ourselves to be able to uplift these other areas of the business as well. So the last bit is I've taken you through a whole bunch of ideas and thinking. There is a lot of great resources out there. Some you might be familiar with, some you might not be. So Value Proposition Design, fantastic book. I would recommend, if you haven't got this book, it's $40. You should go out and get it, and it will give you a step-by-step guide on how to do all the stuff that we've sort of flitted over the top of tonight. It's just a great resource to have, and it also connects directly to another book, which I'll show you in a minute. Google Ventures, Jake Knapp from Google Ventures, put this book out, which is the Design Sprint. It's their version of that 5-day process. Also an excellent read. Great to have as a guide, particularly if you haven't done it before or you don't necessarily have a lot of that facilitated UX kind of experience. This is a really great guide to how to do that at a team of any size, and the right questions to ask. Business model generation, so that's the business canvas. Everything on that business model canvas is equivalent to anything that you can put into a business case. Having written my share of these horrific, oversized 40-page corporate novels that pass off as business cases, I wish that a lot of these businesses I work for had embraced the business model generation, to be able to say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is everything encapsulated on a single page. And if you want to really then start to deep dive on, you've got your value proposition, you've got your lean canvas, you've run your sprints, you've connected to your users, you've got a really clear view of who you are, where you're going, how to get there, and where to next, then this one is once you started to get a little bit more successful, once you started to get a little bit of momentum, this book is fantastic to have. This tells you how to leverage all those things you've just created and how to focus on the areas that are going to give you the greatest return. So it's about, as a business, how do you, once you start to actually get traction, how do you scale out and how do you focus your energy and attention in the right ways? And last but not least, this is a personal favorite of mine, the culture code. I'll give you a little excerpt from this one. So this guy has been around for years. This is not a thick book either, so it's a good tram read. He's just somehow, over the last 30 years, been involved in helping businesses reinvent their brand, their positioning, their who they are, and understanding what connects people to products and services. Jeep was a great example he gave of a project that he worked on. Back in the 80s, they'd shifted away from the old familiar round Jeep headlights and grille that we all kind of know and love. So they'd started moving into the square sort of 80s style Jeep version, and they were losing traction in their market. So they brought this guy in to do a bit of consulting, and what he discovered was that the connection that people had with that brand was different in America and places like Europe, because their association with Jeep was something that was very much tied to a sense of freedom for the Americans. There was this idea that it was like a Brumby, a horse driving around up hills over rocks, and so they were starting to lose that connection with this outdoor vehicle. They lost the connection to the Brumby kind of thing. They've lost the eyes. The eyes are actually a big part of how people connected to this. They sort of, humanized it. And in Europe, more interestingly, the Germans had a strong association with Jeep through World War II. The brand was seen as a liberator, and so there were a lot of fondness for that brand and what it represented for the liberation of Europe. So plugging this back into the brand, they rebranded their whole strategy and reintroduced the round thing and the grille back into the mix, and saw a dramatic uptake in sales in the market. So fantastic reading, a lot of great examples of even things like how they introduced coffee into Japan. Absolutely awesome read. And there's a couple of other links here that recommend having a look at. These will be available in the PowerPoint deck. And I do hope to see some of you guys on the platform at some point. But thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you. How did you know?